The Detroit Lions are in the midst of one of the most anticipated seasons in franchise history. With a win yesterday, the Lions sit at 2-1 headed into next week's Monday Night Football matchup versus Seattle. But don't let the Lions' success distract you from what the other team across the street is doing down the stretch of the MLB season. With a record of 27-11 since August 11th, the Detroit Tigers control their own destiny in the final 6 games of the season for an AL wildcard spot. Win the final 6, and you're playing postseason baseball. All that coming up next on Motor City Connected. All right, right away, I want to just dive into the Detroit Lions win last night versus the Arizona Cardinals in Glendale, Arizona. Lions take it 20-13. Not a pretty performance by any means, by any stretch of the imagination, but you get it done nonetheless. You know, just a ground and pound game, 43 carries on the ground throughout the day. Jared Goff only threw 23 passes. It was going to always be a wear down the Arizona Cardinals defensive front and try and come out with a squeaky close victory towards the end. We know Arizona was going to come in, try to get the ball moving through the air like they usually do. They're a very pass heavy offense. And the Lions were able to neutralize that throughout the entirety of the game. Defense looked incredible from start to finish. Offense looked a little shaky once again, but you get the win, can't complain. A lot of season left, a lot of time to improve on the offensive side of the ball. Just some things that went well. I'll do what went well, what didn't go well. I'll do some players of the game, and then I'll talk about the Tigers towards the back half of the episode. Lions, what went well? Running attack, like I said, was incredible from start to finish. David Montgomery led the charge, 23 carries, 105 yards, and a touchdown. And then obviously Jahmyr Gibbs, he added 83 yards on the ground on 16 carries. Did not get into the end zone on the ground, but did get in the end zone through the air on one of the coolest little hook and ladder plays that I've seen in a long time. It reminded me of when Boise State did it in the Fiesta Bowl about 15 years ago against Oklahoma. Very similar play. Amon-Ra St. Brown kind of pitches it to Jahmyr Gibbs and he gets in the end zone. Doesn't count as a rushing touchdown, but nonetheless, just a really creative play call by Ben Johnson and just ended up with a score, which would eventually be the go-ahead touchdown and the difference maker as the Lions did win by 7 points. So another thing that went well, I thought, was Jared Goff only threw the ball, like I said, 23 times. He had, what was it, 199 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick, 113.6 quarterback rating, 44 QBR, which is an improvement from last week. Still not near where we need it to be if we want to be a Super Bowl contender, but Jared Goff kind of getting more comfortable, not forced to throw as many passes as he did last week. Didn't try to hit too many tight windows except for the one interception he had. But other than that, thought it was a stellar performance by Jared Goff. He hit receivers when they were open. He found guys when he needed to, and he kind of relied on that run game to get them down the field for a couple of those scores early on in the game. But yeah, like I said, the 2 touchdowns, 1 pick, better than what he has been the past 2 weeks. So we'll take it. Defense. Man, I have so much amazing, glowing remarks to say about the defense. The rest of what went well in this game is talking about defense. So let's just get right into it. I thought that that was one of the best coach games of Aaron Glenn's career. The defense was, like I said, bend, don't break. And we're never going to be a Los Angeles Chargers where we're just star-studded, or the 49ers where we're star-studded and we're just going to shut a team down from start to finish. Teams are going to get yards on us. Teams are going to move the ball, but it's going to be a matter of our red zone defense forcing them into turnover on downs, forcing them into field goals, and forcing them into punts. And that's what our defense was able to do all day. You know, we forced 3 3-and-outs on the day, which is very impressive against a Arizona offense that is very efficient at getting the ball down the field early in drives. And so yeah, forced 3 3-and-outs, 2 turnovers on downs in very critical junctions of the game. And then you get the one interception from Kirby Joseph, which was a huge momentum killer for the Cardinals. And then obviously 2 red zone field goals that you force the Cardinals into early on in the game, and then they don't score in the second half besides that one field goal. So they get 10 points in the first half, 3 points in the second half. In an NFL game, that's not going to be good enough to win, even if your offense is struggling. I mean, the Lions didn't look great by any means, but the defense was just so lights out all day. Arizona had a really hard time moving the ball and closing the gap, especially later on in the game. I just wanted a DB room I wanted to highlight. I mean, they were excellent, especially in the second half. I know early on in the game, we got beat a couple times by Marvin Harrison Jr., especially on the touchdown pass. And it looked like maybe Kyler Murray was going to get comfortable and end up just torching this defense, but he didn't. Again, third time I've said it. Bend, don't break. Just beautiful stuff all around. Some players from the DB room that showed out. Carlton Davis, that fourth down tackle he had on Kyler Murray to force the turnover on downs was massive. Did a great job scraping down the line, not allowing Kyler Murray to get to his outside shoulder, forcing him to the boundary, and just ran out of room and was able to get the turnover on downs and get it back to our offense. So good stuff from Carlton Davis. Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph. I said it in my open that Brian and Branch and Kirby Joseph were going to need to be locked in. Kyler Murray is so good getting out of the pocket, letting his receivers leak down the field, finding open receivers down the field, and just taking the top off the defense. So Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph were so good all day, taking what the offense was giving them, not trying to make too many flashy plays, but just staying home, staying over the top, not allowing Marvin Harrison Jr. and Marco Wilson to just burn you, and made some really, really good plays. A couple pass deflections from both of them, including the Kirby Joseph interception early on in the second half. Um, Terrion Arnold, I thought was great as well. I know he had a couple DPIs early on in the game. Actually, I think he only had one DPI, but he has been flagged a lot this year, and for a young corner, that can be very mentally taxing. So the fact that in the second half he was able to kind of slow down, had a couple really good pass deflections, one of them on Marvin Harrison Jr., and I think he's starting to settle in. So that'll be really interesting to see how he matches up against Seattle's heavy passing offense with Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, and Jackson Smith and Jigba. Held Arizona to 3 second half points. I mean, we saw last week, Arizona has the ability to put up a lot of points fast. They put up 41 points against the Rams, who just beat the 49ers. So you know that Arizona is going to put up points. It's going to be a matter if your offense can match it, but the defense came out firing all day long, looked incredible, and forced them to 3 second half points. That's not going to get it done in the NFL, especially when you're playing a team like the Lions. Um, Another thing that went well, Jack Fox. I was going to put him as a player of the game because he was so effective, but kind of wanted to leave that to more skill position players. But I did want to highlight Jack Fox. He was incredible all day, pinning Arizona inside their own 10, inside their own 8, just giving our special teams an opportunity to down the ball within the 15, within the 10-yard line. And he does not punt the ball into the end zone. He rarely ever has touchbacks. It's most of the time he forces a fair catch at the 10-yard line, or like I said, allows our special teams unit to get down the field and down the ball within a certain 15, 20 yards. That's a huge, huge plus for a team like the Lions, especially with the offense kind of struggling right now. If you can flip the field most possessions and force the other team to go 90 yards every single time, it takes a toll, especially with how quickly our defense was getting off the field and how much our offense managed the game. I mean, we had a 13-minute time of possession advantage in this game. So forcing Arizona to have long fields was massive. Great job by Jack Fox. Just an absolute weapon to have on this team. And I'm sure he's going to be a big, big part of this team down the stretch. Um, and then the run defense between the tackles. Obviously, Kyler Murray had 45 yards on the ground, but as a unit, they only had 77 total yards. James Conner could not get anything going on the ground. They were trying to get the ball to Trey Benson. They even gave Emari Demercado an opportunity to get some touches, but they just couldn't do anything. James Conner was 9 for 17, 1.9 average. This run defense might be the best in the entire league. If we can figure out a way to contain a quarterback, I just don't see how teams are going to be able to move the ball on the ground. I mean, our defensive front is so stout in that regard, and our linebackers are so quick at reading whether it's going to be a pass or a run, and getting down the line and scraping down the line and forcing negative plays from the run game that I don't see a lot of teams being able to move the ball. They're going to have to get it through the air. So as our DB room becomes more comfortable, it's really nice to see that our run game, our run defense is still as stout as it was last year. Um, don't want to dive too much on what did not go well, but there was definitely some glaring weaknesses and also a lot of injuries. I'll just go over the injuries right now, just a list of people. I don't want to talk too much about it because it's a big damper on everyone's mental health going into next week. But Derek Barnes, Sam Laporta, Marcus Davenport, Dan Skipper, Levi Onwuzurike, Brian Branch, and Lee McNeil all got hurt in this game. Terrion Arnold got hurt but was able to come back in. The injuries aren't looking great. Dan Skipper, we don't know. Levi Onwuzurike doesn't look great. Marcus Davenport's looks not great. Aleem McNeil, we'll see. He is an injury-ridden player. Brian Branch was just a concussion protocol. I'm sure he'll be back next week, especially with the extra day of rest going into Monday. Derek Barnes with a knee injury, also not good. Laporta will probably be questionable going into next week, but a lot of those other guys will probably be scratches heading into Seattle. It's going to have to be a next man up mentality. We have an early bye week after week 4, so we'll get some more time to get those guys healthy, but we're going to have some guys step up, step up. Simple as that. We'll see later in the week. I'll do more of a rundown about the injury report and who is questionable, who's out, who's been practicing, and we'll get a little rundown of that. Another thing that didn't go well, second half scoring, just couldn't move the ball for the life of us. I mean, we scored 0 second half points. Obviously, you're playing conservative with a lead, but I don't love that. I'd say you go down, you try and pad that lead, get some extra points, and then you're not trying to get a first down with 2 minutes to go like we were to end the game. You could seal the game 5 minutes prior to that if you are able to go down and even kick 2 field goals in the second half or get a touchdown drive in there. It just wasn't great. It was stagnant. Play calling seemed a little lazy. It seemed like they were playing very, very conservative to not lose the game, which worked. So can't really complain, but when we're playing teams like the Dallas Cowboys and when we're playing teams like the Niners, who are going to be very, very apt to score late in games. I mean, you saw the Cowboys last night almost came back on the Ravens. So late game scoring is going to have to start getting better. It was obvious that Arizona was keying into what we wanted to do, and we couldn't move the ball. So we're gonna have to fix that up. That's gonna have to be something that is adjusted this week going into Seattle, and I'm sure will be a priority. So Ben Johnson and Jared Goff were better this week, more on the same page, but not nearly as much as what we're gonna need if we want to make a run this year. The Goff interception, you try to fit it into the tight end. I get the idea, just not the time, not the window. Fight to see another day. They throw the pick. Obviously, our defense comes up clutch with the fourth down stop after the interception. They don't score any points off of it, but man, it's just, you got to be better than that, Jared Goff. We know what you're capable of. We know you're a very smart quarterback that takes care of the ball for the most part. But so far this season, that's not been the case. We have to ensure that Jared Goff's taking care of the ball because our defense can only hold up for so long. They did a great job yesterday when our offense was kind of putting them with their backs against the wall. Still figured out a way to come out with a win. But again, like I said, not going to be the case in games against the Cowboys and the Niners and other very premier teams in the league. Last thing that didn't go well, containing the QB early on in the game. Kyler Murray got out of the pocket, had a couple good runs, did a way better job in the second half. But again, we have always been a very poor open field tackling team against quarterbacks. That's going to have to be a priority if we want to make a run this year. And then players of the game. I have 3 guys that I wanted to highlight. First one, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Had some struggles early on in week 1. Week 2 kind of came back out, had a lot better game. Didn't come out with a win, but good to see Amon-Ra having a very productive game in a win. 7 catches, 75 yards, and a touchdown. It felt like whenever we needed a third down conversion, whenever we needed a big play, he was kind of that guy that was coming up clutch. And obviously, we know Jared Goff and him have a great connection, and that's going to continue for the rest of the year. Amon-Ra is one of the premier receivers in this league. I don't expect anything to be differently down the stretch this year. Another player of the game, Frank Ragnow. I mean, he led up the sack, but man, in that run game, he is such a weapon. He doesn't obviously get nearly as much credit as he deserves, but Power Football Focus, the PFF, graded him incredibly this week. He had an awesome game, and that PFF does a really good job of, especially for linemen, when obviously offensive linemen don't have a ton of statistics that or that determines whether they're good or bad. Defensive linemen obviously has sacks and tackles for loss and whatnot, but PFF does a good job of highlighting O linemen, and they had really good things to say about Frank Ragnow, especially late in the game in some of those big run plays that David Montgomery had or Jahmyr Gibbs had. He was doing the right thing at the right time, getting to the next level, blocking linebackers, blocking safeties, ensuring that our running backs were at least getting a chance to get to the second level. So awesome stuff for Frank Ragnow. One of my favorite players on this team, just such a glue guy. Um, and I'm excited to see what he's able to do down the stretch in the run game. And then the last player of the game, Kirby Joseph. I already highlighted earlier, but the pick to open up the second half was huge momentum shift for this team. I mean, Arizona kind of comes out, they score late in the second half. They've got a little bit of swagger. Kyler Murray's feeling it, and they're moving the ball. They try and take a deep shot. They try and get some points early, and Kirby Joseph just does Kirby Joseph things. Ball hawking safety comes in. I'm sure Kyler Murray didn't even see him until the ball was in the air. Kirby picks it off, and that was that for that drive. Just ended it just like that when they were moving the ball very efficiently, and just a huge momentum killer for Kyler Murray and the Cardinals offense. And you bring your offense back out on the field. So great stuff from Kirby. We don't know what happens in that game if he doesn't get that interception. If Kyler Murray starts to get more comfortable in the game and ends up with 280 yards and 3 touchdowns through the air, you can kind of attest that to maybe we didn't pick him off, maybe we didn't get in his head. And I think that Kirby Joseph interception was a really, really good way to start off the second half because it made Kyler Murray a little bit more apprehensive about throwing those deep balls throughout the rest of the game. And that's all I really have on the Lions. Let's dive into the Tigers, man. I mean, both the Cats, it's a great day to be a cat in the city of Detroit yesterday. I mean, Lions get the dub, Tigers get the dub, both on the road, but I'm sure that that city was feeling it. We're right there on the cusp of a playoff push for this Tigers team. They control their own destiny down the stretch. There's no reason we shouldn't make it with how hot we're playing. Um, I want to talk about the weekend series, and then we'll kind of dive into the final 6 games of the year, some keys to making the playoffs. But the weekend series was a roller coaster of emotions. You start off on Friday with a 7-1 loss, error early on in the game that drives in a run for Baltimore, and you kind of think, man, this could be the end of the year. You go into Baltimore, they get a 7-1 win on Friday, that Saturday Sunday series. Crowd's going to be live, that crowd's going to be packed, and you pull out 2 straight wins. Not pretty wins, but 2 straight wins nonetheless. 6-4 in extras on Saturday. I know I did a little rundown of that game on my Instagram on Motor City Connected with Kyle Garrison. If you want to go check that out. I won't touch on too much, but Trey Sweeney with the game-saving catch. If you haven't checked out that play, I would recommend it. I have it on my Instagram as well. He makes an over shoulder the grab that keeps the runner at third in, I believe, the bottom of the ninth. If that ball gets down, Baltimore wins the game, wins the series in the first 2 games, and Detroit is looking from the outside in on the playoff race. But Trey Sweeney makes a beautiful play. Bo Brisky saves the door, shuts the door in the ninth and the 10th. Tigers squeak out one of the most nerve-wracking wins I've experienced this year. It was a sweat from start to finish, but the better team got it done. And I have no problem saying that the Tigers are a better team than the Orioles right now. We beat them 4 out of 6 games in the past 2 weeks. I mean, this team is feeling it. You go into Baltimore, who has been riding very hot this year. They're a really, really impressive team with some great talent, great pitching staff, and you take 2 out of 3 again after doing it a week prior. So really, really positive stuff to see, especially considering if the Tigers were to make the playoffs today, they would get Houston, but who knows, if the Tigers end up pulling out 6 out of the next 6, we could see a wild card matchup again versus the Orioles. And we have their number right now. So that would be really, really fun. Then you follow up the 6-4 win on Saturday on Sunday with another really, really tight game, 4-3 win. Kerry Carpenter with 2 bombs, Spencer Torkelson with 1, and then another defensive player saving the game for the Tigers, Parker Meadows doing Parker Meadows things, robs a Colton Cowser home run. At that point, it's a 3-3 ball game. If Colton Cowser hits that home run, it's a 5-3 ball game. That crowd is going to be going wild. Instead, Parker Meadows robs the home run. You go into the top of the 7th. Kerry Carpenter ends up getting the game, which would eventually be the game-winning home run. 4-3 win. Just the baseball gods are in our favor right now. I mean, that ball that Colton Cowser hit looked like it was 450 feet. That ball looked like it was way out of here, and it just floated just long enough for Parker Meadows in his 6'5 frame to reach up over the wall, grab that ball, and save the game, which we would eventually win. So, I mean, you cannot look at Parker Meadows and tell me he isn't the best defensive center fielder in the league. Andy Dirk said it himself on the broadcast. Not a single player in Major League Baseball can make that play that Parker Meadows made last night. He is a difference maker and I think is going to be one of the best hitting and defensive center fielders in the league for years to come. He's so young, he's so explosive. Just shout out Parker Meadows. He has really, I mean, single-handedly has helped turn this team around. Obviously, Riley Green stepping up, Kerry Carpenter coming back, Spencer Torkelson figuring it out. Colt Keith has been hot. But man, I don't think there's a single player you can point out that's made a bigger impact than Parker Meadows down the stretch this year. Weekend series, Foley bounce back performance on Sunday. On Saturday, he got knocked around, almost gave up a loss. I mean, he gave up the 2 runs in the bottom of the ninth that allowed Baltimore to tie the game up 4-4. But obviously, like I said, Bo Brisky was able to come in, save the day on Friday, or save the day on Saturday, excuse me. And then Sunday, Jason Foley was a lot more settled down. He strikes out Gunnar Henderson with 2 outs in the ninth to end the game. Especially in a 4-3 ball game, that's a really, really high leverage situation that Jason Foley was put in. And despite having a shaky game on Saturday, he came in on Sunday, shut the door, got the job done. Short memory like a cornerback, and it was beautiful. So good to see the bounce back from Jason. We know this bullpen is really, really good, but obviously they're gonna have some rough outings and they're gonna give up some runs. But the fact that we still feel comfortable enough to put in another guy and shut the door is very helpful. And we still have the confidence in Jason Foley to come in on Sunday after a bad game Saturday and get the win. So just great all around performance throughout this weekend. Some stressful games, but wins nonetheless, and we will take them. Stack wins, baby. Yeah, like the last thing I said was win by any means necessary. It doesn't have to be pretty. You don't get style points in baseball, so let's just keep winning, man. Final 6 games starting on Tuesday, off day today. Get some rest for the bullpen, which would be huge. But you get 3 versus Tampa Bay, and then you have 3 versus the White Sox. If you don't know, White Sox have secured the worst record in MLB history. They're the worst team in MLB history. You have to get 3. You have to get a sweep, and it's simple as that. There's not much else I have to say about that. I don't think there's any keys to this. I don't think it's going to be an AJ Hinch managerial masterclass. It's going to be a matter of you pitch well, you get runs, you get out of that series with a sweep. With Tampa Bay, completely different story. With Tampa Bay, you have a great pitching staff. You know, they haven't given up a ton of runs this year, but their run scoring has been atrocious. Their bats have been awful. They traded Isaac Paredes early on in the trade deadline. They were sellers at the trade deadline, and that's continued to be the theme for them throughout the rest of the year. They're around 500, so they're not going to be a pushover by any means. But if you can score runs early, it's going to be really hard for them to come back because they just have not been effective in scoring runs late in games. You get Tarek Skubal on the mound on Tuesday, which is huge. Obviously, we know what we're going to get from Tarek. And if you can get a win on Tuesday with 5 games down the stretch, you're going to be sitting very, very comfortably in that wild card position. So Tarek's start will be massive on Tuesday if we can get a win out of that. And going into the next two games, the pitching for Tampa Bay, again, like I said, has been solid. So you're not going to be able to rely on Tarek to just come in and allow a run, maybe two, and get away with a 4-2 victory. You never know. It's late in the season. Teams are fighting for their lives. It motivates teams to play spoilers. So Tampa Bay is going to come in and they're not going to play scared, or they're not going to look at our record and play timid. They're going to come out firing. So you're going to have to be ready. Um, Fortunately, games are all at Comerica Park. That place is, hopefully, cross my fingers, that place is going to be rocking. It is going to be loud. The fans are going to be excited. This is the first time the Lions, the Pistons, Lions, Pistons, Tigers, Red Wings. It's the first time that the Tigers have had a winning record since 2016, guaranteed at this point now, with them being 8 games over 500 with 6 games left. So hopefully Comerica will be loud. I know that a couple of my buddies that are back home in Michigan right now are thinking about going. So if you're watching this and you're thinking about going, do it. I mean, we haven't had postseason baseball in Detroit in 10 years. So go enjoy it while you can. And yeah, I mean, we're ready to go. We're ready to take on these last 6 games and make the playoffs. I mean, nobody wants to face Tarek Skubal. Promise you that. If we get the Orioles in the wild card, I'm telling you right now, they do not want to see Tarek Skubal. So good stuff this weekend. A lot of losses. Kansas City has now dropped 7 straight games. We're tied with them. They do have the tiebreaker, but we're tied with them at 82 and 74. So if they drop a game or two down the stretch, that could be huge. We could move up another wild card spot. The Twins, they've struggled down the stretch. They lost 2 to Boston yesterday in a doubleheader, and now we sit a whole game above the Twins. Therefore, we control our own destiny down the stretch, which is huge. If you win 6 games, you're in the playoffs. It's simple as that. You win the last 6 games, you're in. It's very hard to win 6 games in baseball. It's really hard to get 2 sweeps in a row. But if anybody can do it, it's this Tigers team. They've been hottest team in baseball the last month, and just hope that continues down the stretch. Like I said, Royals offense has struggled. Ray's offense has struggled all year, but pitching has been really, really solid. So if you can squeak out a couple 2-1, 3-1 ball games against this team, you're gonna be looking pretty, because their pitching is solid, offense not. So we'll see how that plays out. I mean, the Tigers' offense is pretty similar to how we've been. Offense hasn't been great, been better than the Rays, but pitching has really been carrying us down the stretch. So it's going to be interesting to see how Tampa Bay plays us in this 3-game stretch. And then last thing I wanted to touch on was just the keys to making the playoffs. I mean, like I said, win out. That's the main key. You win 6 games, you're in. So that's the main key, but just some smaller little nuances. Hinch continues to manage the way the way he has been. I mean, putting pitchers in the right position, putting pinch batters in the right position. We know what he does. We know that he plays his lineup cards very, very specifically to who the pitcher that is starting for the opposing team is. If it's a lefty, he's going to have his guys who hit well against lefties. If it's a righty, he's going to have his guys who hit well against righties. And he's going to pinch hit in spots when the other team puts in bullpen pitchers. He's going to pinch hit regardless if he's got a pinch hit for Kerry Carpenter or for Riley Green. He's going to make the call to help the team win. So if Hinch continues to do that, we should have no problem making the playoffs. Outfield and infield defense needs to continue to stay sharp. It's a 162-game season. It is a long, long season. That's a lot of defensive innings of baseball being played. That's over 1,000 innings of baseball. If you're a defender, you got to stay locked in down these last 6 games. You can't let the fatigue get to you. You can't let, the 162 games you've played affect you down the most important stretch of the season. Got to be sharp. Cannot make errors like we did in game 1 against the Orioles. And if we do that, again, should have no problem. This defense has been insane. Spencer Torkelson's been great at first. Colt Keith is starting to pick it up at second. Trey Sweeney has really picked up that shortstop position, batting and defensively. I mean, the outfield, Parker Meadows, Riley Green have been great. Matt Vierling has been solid. He's kind of a Swiss Army knife that we can put in there. So Guys just have to be locked in and should be a positive end to the year. And then last thing, just continue to control what you can control. We've done a really good job of we don't look at the box scores of other games. We're not looking at the records of other teams. Just play ball, win ball games, and the rest will figure itself out. I think that AJ Hinch, I'm sure, has done a great job in the locker room, just reassuring the guys, hey, I will be in charge of looking at what the Twins and the Royals and the Orioles and the rest of the wild card contenders are doing. You guys just be in charge of locking in, studying up on your assignments, making plays and winning ball games, and everything will figure itself out. So it falls on AJ Hinch's shoulders, man. He's been great, and I can expect him to continue to be great. So really good stuff from the Tigers, man. It's just they're fun to watch. I mean, giving the fans something to be excited about in mid-September, late September is something I did not expect to hear 2 months ago. So just overall, great performances by the Tigers and the Lions this weekend. Not a lot of negativity to say. So that's always going to be a plus for this podcast because, again, I don't want to be too negative. I want to talk about how great the Lions, Tigers, and Red Wings are. Pistons on the other hand, we'll talk about them later. The jury's still out on them, but right now Detroit is up. The vibes in the city got to just be through the roof. I'm not there right now. I'm in Salt Lake City, but I mean, Detroit, man, up and coming. It's exciting to see. It's fun to watch. The fans are finally behind their teams. I mean, the Lions and Tigers have just been pitiful the past 10 years. And we're back. We're back, baby. Let's make the playoffs this week for the Tigers and let's go in and start the year 3-1 with a win against Seattle. So that's all I have. This has been Motor City Connected with Kyle Garrison. Stay tuned throughout the week. Check out my Instagram as I will be posting a bunch of highlights and updates on the Tigers. And we'll catch you guys next week. Peace.